Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Chris.
I'm Carly.
And this is CNC Reptiles. And today we're going to take a look at the 5 things that we thought about when setting up our quarantine rack. Let's take a look. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We really appreciate y'all taking this journey with us. If you are new to the channel and you like what you see, Carly, what do we want them to do?
Like, subscribe, and hit the bell.
Hit that bell so that you know when we have new content. So, like we said in the intro, guys, today we want to take a look at how we set up our quarantine rack. If you've seen the last couple of weeks, or over the last few weeks, I guess I should say, we've got a few or a couple new animals. And so what we thought we would do is talk about how we set up our quarantine rack. Because number one, whenever you have new animals come into your clan of ball pythons, you certainly don't want any illnesses to spread. Should they have some, whether it be mites, respiratory infections, things of that nature, you certainly don't want that to spread throughout your other animals. And so, Carly, what was the first thing we thought of whenever we were looking to set up our quarantine?
Location.
The location, yeah. So, guys, when you're thinking about location, there's a lot of different things that you're going to see out there, and some people will say you should house new animals in a completely different building. Well, we don't have a completely different building, so we at this point we don't really even have a snake room per se. We have kind of a snake area, right? And so we've even heard, as long as it's different rooms, right, that they're not in the same room. So what we did, guys, is we actually have an upstairs and a downstairs in our house, and the snake area is actually in the upstairs. You've probably seen it on a few videos that we've had. But that's where we have our first 2 ball pythons that we got. They're actually upstairs in our snake area. So when we thought about location, we thought, well, we probably want it downstairs, but there was kind of a limited areas that we could do to really try to control all the temperatures and the humidities well for our new animals coming into our ball python clan. And so we actually elected for our office. So our office is downstairs. It is completely away from our snake area, where our first 2 snakes are housed. And hopefully the idea is that it's far enough away, being downstairs, that no diseases, mites, things of that nature would be able to travel that far. So I think ultimately, guys, what you're going to have to do is really just figure out for your own situation, where are you going to be able to house new animals? And it's something you really need to think about prior to getting new animals coming into your clan. So that's the location. That's kind of how we determined where we wanted the quarantine area to be. So, all right, Carly, so what is the next thing that we really considered when we were setting up our quarantine area?
Setup.
The setup, that's right. So guys, let's take a look, a little bit closer look at our setup. Hey folks, so here is our setup. So if you saw our rack video a few weeks back, you know that this is the VE2, or the 2-high rack from Vivarium Electronics. We have 2 of them, knowing that as we added animals, we were going to go ahead and separate those so that one could actually be our quarantine rack. So when we talk about setup, that's what we did. Now, the first thing I will tell you guys is if you're getting multiple animals at different times, you probably want to have 2 separate, or 3, or however many animals you're going to get, quarantine areas. These 2 we were actually supposed to get about a week apart, which is why I was just going to keep them in the same rack. They did wind up coming about almost 3 weeks apart. Ultimately, all that's going to do is add to the duration of our quarantine, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But let's talk a little bit about what we've got here. So obviously, we're in a separate area, right? And the setup is almost identical to upstairs. So we're here. We've got separate set of feeding tongs, a separate hook. We've got a separate laser gun there for the heat. We've even got separate hand sanitizer here, separate water, thermostats, paper towels, and even water, and then our F10 solution. So the ultimate idea, guys, is I shouldn't have to use anything from my original things for our ball pythons upstairs down here in the quarantine area. Because think about it. If I was feeding with these tongs, right, and I go ahead and I feed these girls downstairs, and then I go upstairs to feed Cutie and to feed Bubbles, I've now potentially just transmitted any potential diseases, mites, things of that nature upstairs to my normal clan. And now granted, I only have 2 and we only have 4 now, but think if you had, 20, 30, 100 snakes like some of these people have, boy, you certainly don't want things going through your collection. So again, a separate rack, a separate thermostat, and then everything that you would possibly need. You need basically 2 of now, right? So that you can have a set down in your quarantine area. You can also have a set up at your regular snake room, snake area, whatever you have. So now we're going to go ahead, since we're right here, we're going to talk about the third thing that we need. And Carly, what's the third thing that we talked about when setting up our quarantine area?
Tub setup.
The tub setup. So let's take a look at that. We're actually, it's interesting that we're shooting this now because we actually have 2 separate tubs set up. So you're actually going to see, I think Angel was out just a second ago. She is. This is how we initially set up our tubs. Very minimalistic, and we're going to talk about this. So paper towel, water bowl that you can see, and a hide. Really don't necessarily have to have a hide. We do have a hide. We like to provide them. We think that the enrichment the snakes get with it is pretty cool. So the reason we use paper towels is because if you're ever going to, or if you're going to see mites, if your snake might happen to have mites, that's going to be very easy. Mites are little black insects that basically suck the blood out of your reptile, right, under their scales. You'll actually be able to see the mites as they die actually on the paper towels, okay? Now, a normal mite kind of life cycle, I guess if you will, from the time that they are laid, a female lays eggs, to a time that they would actually hatch, is about 13 to 19 days. And a mite can live for up to 40 days. So we're actually going to keep Angel here. She's our newest. We're going to keep her on these paper towels for a month, for a full 30 days. In that time, should we see any mites, any die-off, we're going to be able to see it in that time frame. So it's a very minimalistic, very clean, very easy to maintain setup when the ball pythons first come into our clan. So now we're going to set her back in, and we're going to show you. We've got Peanut over here. Now, Peanut we've had for almost 6 weeks now, something like that. So Peanut we have already moved over to substrate. So this is just the ReptiChip that we use with our ball pythons upstairs. So again, water dish, hide, and now we've just moved them over to the ReptiChip. And now let me back up. We would keep them on the paper towel substrate, assuming we saw anything like a mite, any type of indication they might have a respiratory disease, anything like that. Respiratory disease, you're going to maybe see some foam, kind of almost a foam at the mouth type of deal. You may see some where they brush up against the sides of the container here. You could see kind of a residue almost to that. So that's why we keep them on the very clean substrate. Then we're going to move them over here for about 30 days as well. Just make sure they're good on the ReptiChip. They continue eating. They continue thriving and doing everything that you expect for your ball python to do. All right, guys. So that was a little bit about the setup and the tub setup. We went ahead and pulled Angel out since she was looked like she was out kind of perusing around anyway. But Carly, what's the fourth thing we really thought about as far as quarantine?
Duration.
The duration, right. So again, that's kind of one of those, it seems like, highly debated topics out there of how long you need to quarantine these little guys, right? I have heard everything from a minimum of 30 days all the way up to a year in quarantine, specifically because there are some diseases that may not show up for that long. Well, we're probably not going to do a year. What I was kind of thinking was anywhere from 60 to about 90 days, okay? And I'll tell you kind of why we came to that decision. So the first 30 days, as you saw in our tub setup, this little girl is going to be on paper towels, right? Very minimalistic setup, very easy to see if there might be mites, if there might be a respiratory infection. Very easy to see when they go to the bathroom. Does that look normal, or is it really runny? Is there anything that kind of you need to look at there? And we're going to do that for 30 days. Again, assuming that we don't see anything. Now, if we don't see anything, then we're going to go to the ReptiChip, and for 30 days, probably at minimum, we're going to make sure that they continue to thrive. Are they eating well? Do they continue kind of the same behavior we've been seeing them with whenever we had them for the first 30 days on the paper towel substrate? And that's going to be anywhere from, like I said, 30 to maybe 60 days, just depending on how the animals go. Now, that could be controversial. Maybe it's not. If we saw something, obviously we're going to increase the duration of the quarantine. Peanut is actually going to wind up being in quarantine longer than I would have anticipated, just because we didn't get Angel here for about 3 weeks after we had Peanut, right? So just by proxy, when Angel came into the quarantine area, well, that restarted the clock for Peanut, because if she were to have brought anything in, well, we might have just, Peanut might now have that, right? Whatever it would have been. Now also, and I should back up and also mention, when you're first unboxing your animals, a really good look over, right? Looking for mites, looking for anything that looks out of the ordinary. Mites are going to hang out around the mouth, under the chin, around the eyes, around the vent back here. Those are the areas you're going to really, really want to look and make sure that you're inspecting. But again, the duration is really going to be kind of up to you and what you feel is the best thing for your animals, okay? So again, so we're going to look anywhere from 60 to 90 days, assuming that we don't see anything. At the end of that time period, we don't see anything, we'll introduce them to the rest of the clan. All right, guys, so Carly, what's the fifth thing that we really wanted to make sure that we had down setting up our quarantine area? The routine. And so this is going to be different for everyone, guys, but what I mean by routine, what you've got to be ready to do is, it's fine to have your area set up, and maybe you're great at that, and you know they're in a separate area, the tubs are going well, they're feeding, all that fun stuff. But then maybe you handle this little girl, and then I run right upstairs and I handle Bubbles, right? Well, we have now effectively killed the quarantine, right? Because if she has anything and we don't wash our hands, sanitize our hands, or do something along those lines, we've now just taken whatever potential issues that she may have, and we've translated it now to the rest of our clan upstairs. So here's kind of the routine that we came up with. First and foremost, basically if we handle these snakes down here, so if we handle Peanut or Bubbles, Peanut or Angel, we don't handle Bubbles or Cutie. We just don't. That doesn't mean we never handle Bubbles or Cutie. We can handle Bubbles and Cutie first if we want to go up there and we want to spend time with them, and then we want to come down and hold Angel and hold Peanut. That's great. We can do that, but we cannot do the opposite. Even if we wash our hands, even if we sanitize with hand sanitizer, if we hold these snakes first, we don't go upstairs and we don't handle the other snakes. Think about a mite. If she had mites, it could potentially jump on my clothes. That could translate over to the other. I mean, there's just a whole host of things that could happen. So that was the first thing we said. If we're going to handle these snakes, we either handle those girls first and then we come handle these, or if we happen to hold these first, then we don't handle those upstairs, okay? The second thing that goes along with that is feeding, cleaning, anything like that. I always start upstairs. So like, for instance, today is a Saturday. On Saturday, I completely change out water bowls, wash them, and give new water every Saturday. I start upstairs. If they're on the bedding, I'll mix it up, right? Just to kind of mix the bedding up and make sure I'm not missing a urate, make sure I'm not missing a poop or something like that. I start upstairs. So everything starts in the snake room first and then comes to the quarantine area. You don't want to do it the opposite way. There's just the potential for cross-contamination at that point, and your whole quarantine process, it kind of falls by the wayside. And then finally, just ensuring that anytime we have finished handling these girls, anytime we finish feeding, anytime we finish cleaning, we do go ahead and wash our hands and we do go ahead and sanitize our hands. Whether we're not going to go upstairs and necessarily hold Bubbles or Cutie, but we don't want anything to potentially spread out here, and then ultimately that could get upstairs. For the most part, we keep Bubbles and Cutie upstairs anyway now, just we don't bring them down, we don't want any possibility of just contaminating Bubbles and Cutie with anything that these two might have. Now, that being said, I don't think these two have anything, right? But if you don't have a good solid process when you've got 1 or 2 snakes and you're bringing others into your clan, then when you have many, many more snakes, you just really, now you're really running a high risk of contaminating your all your animals, right? And so making sure you have a nice routine down to start with ensures that in the future, you're not going to have any issues. All right, guys. Hey, we really appreciate you hanging out with us today and learning about how we came up with our quarantine process and how we quarantine our animals. So, Carly, what's our fun fact for today?
If you're changing their substrate or their tubs or like the size of the tub, to make sure they're still acting normally, the way they did before you change.
Sure, absolutely, and we've actually got an update video coming for Cutie and Bubbles here in the next couple of weeks. And whenever you're changing tub sizes, guys, like Carly said, or if you're going from a paper substrate to a ReptiChip type substrate or vice versa, right? What we try to do is we always try to do that right a couple of days after they eat. So we always give them 48 hours minimum before we really do anything with them. But if we're going to change something like that, we'll usually do it like on a Wednesday, since they eat on Sundays. That gives them all of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to really get accustomed to the new smells, to the new hide if there's a new hide, to the new substrate if there's a new substrate. And ultimately, it will give you the best possibility of them continuing to eat, not going off food because they're stressed out, but they become really, really used to their new surroundings. So, great fun fact. All right, guys, we really appreciate you coming along today. We'll see you next time. Bye.